Hi, Jackie. A few attendees are starting to join now.
Thank you.
All right, it's 11:59. Got a few people joining in.
Great. We'll just wait a couple more minutes.
Nice to see some familiar names in the attendees joining in. Welcome all.
Just, hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. We'll give everyone a few minutes to join us. Radio. A few more minutes.
Fantastic to see so many attendees. You never know with registrations how many will come through. It's very exciting.
That's right. Hoping everyone can see those slides there.
I can see it.
Fantastic. Let's give everyone a minute or two longer. Someone's just popped in there that the chat has been disabled. I'm wondering, Jonathan, if you could just double check that that chat function.
No problem. Could you make me co-host? It might allow me to change any settings.
You're a co-host.
Hmm.
Yes. Should be possible. What about Q&A? If the chat doesn't work, we'll use the Q&A.
Sounds good.
It's
So I
working.
tested the chat just there, and I can write in the chat, but seems attendees can't.
Okay, let's apologies for that. That might be a setting, one of my little errors there. I'm setting it up. Okay. So look, I think we might get started just in the interest of time as people are still probably grabbing some lunch and joining us. We are recording today's session, so if anyone does need to share it internally, you can obviously do that. Just let us know and we'll forward you a copy. But first of all, thank you all very much for joining us here today at Business Renewable Centre Australia. Lots of familiar names and not as yet faces, given we're in a webinar setting. However, lots of people may also be new. So welcome to Business Renewable Centre Australia. So I'm Jackie McEwen. I'm Program Director at Business Renewable Centre, and I have with me today Jonathan Prendergast, who is our Technical Director. So we are here today to talk to you about our Buyers Group program 2024. It's our first year that we'll be running this program, so we're very excited. And we're opening this program up to interested organisations to join. And it's fundamentally a renewable energy purchasing program. So I'll jump on and we'll get on with the slides. Before we start today, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land which we meet today, many different lands, I'm sure, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, which we do through thoughtful and collaborative approaches to our work. So welcome everyone from all of the lands on which you are today. For us here in Sydney, it's the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation are the traditional custodians here. So a little bit about us. Some of you have seen this slide 1,000 times, and for some of you it might be new, but we are a not-for-profit organisation, and we have been for the past 6 years providing education, training, connection and innovation to support organisations in purchasing renewable energy, and particularly via power purchase agreements or PPAs. So today's session is about joining a group that will seek a PPA for renewable energy, thereby being able to say that you are powered by renewable energy. As a lot of organisations develop their sustainability targets now and are really trying to get rid of some of those emissions, particularly Scope 2 emissions, obviously renewable energy procurement has become very popular. And we were established, as I mentioned, about 6 years ago with support from and state governments of New South Wales, Victoria and Queensland. And we are a member-based organisation. You do not have to be a member, however, to participate in the program that we are launching today. So today's agenda, we've just got an hour, so we're going to go through, we've already talked a little bit about who we are. And we're going to talk about what the opportunity is to join the buyers group. Why would you even think about joining a buyers group? What are some good examples of buyers groups that have gone before us? And John's going to tell us about a good number of those. We're going to tell you about specifically what we are planning to do with this particular group this year, and broadly the project timeline and how to register your interest. So as we mentioned, it looks like the chat might be disabled, but please pop your questions and comments into the Q&A, which I hope you will be able to access. And obviously, if there's anything else, we'll try and allow a little bit of question time at the end as well. So what is the opportunity? You might have heard of various organisations, large and small, Engaging in group buying. So this is really where you're pooling your electricity load together with other organisations in order to purchase renewable energy. A few great quotes there from various organisations that have participated in groups. Fulton Hogan, who participated in the MREP2, I believe, Melbourne Renewable Energy Project, led by the City of Melbourne, saying that this project will enable Fulton Hogan to power all of their quarries, asphalt plants, blending facilities across Victoria, giving them renewable carbon neutral electricity. So a fantastic claim to be able to make. Similarly, ISPPT participated in the MREP project and were very excited to participate in a collaborative project to secure long-term electricity contracting for their portfolio of projects. And then I guess, group buying situation, which was led by Lion on the right there, who played a role as the anchor partner in a group deal in order to provide that negotiation and load that really facilitated this particular group PPA, providing the Australian Hotels Association members at the time, I believe they're now TAA, with the confidence to be able to join a group deal. So in some cases, it can be led by an organisation, a not-for-profit or a council, and in others, more by a large sort of anchor organisation. But there are lots of different models, and we'll come back to that. So what is the opportunity here? So there are a number of factors to consider if you're looking at jumping into a group buy. And so this particular project is being funded, or the piece that we're doing is being funded by the City of Sydney. It's a fantastic initiative under the Nation Grants Program. And what their goal and our partnered mutual goal with the City of Sydney is to really look at having a number of companies that can say that they're based in New South Wales or even the City of Sydney, ideally, and that they've been able to combine in a corporate PPA to support a new, for example, 5 megawatt regional solar farm. So a really great claim that if you're participating in that group, your organisation would be able to say, and ideally at the same time, having some form of discount on your electricity billing. Equally, it could end up that when the group goes to market, they might actually purchase green power together to go 100% renewable. So the announcement might be something around that. And you can imagine your logos there. So some organisations who've done that in the past, you can see Fox Studios and a number of others. I think that's Ambulance Victoria there. Who were able to announce such things based on their green power purchase. So it might be even more exciting headlines, of course, depending on what the group actually does and what purchasing model is the ultimate purchasing model. So quickly a bit on our project goals. So we're going to establish a group of energy buyers from either all private or a mixture of public and private sector committed to procuring renewable energy via group negotiation. We're going to support and educate that group around the opportunity for offsite renewable energy procurement via group PPA. So taking what we give you here in this session and really expanding on that to help you with your internal processes and approvals. We're going to support the group, energy legal consultants to progress towards a tender process. So we're not going to be the energy consultant. If you're an energy consultant listening, you're probably cheering about that. Nor are we going to be the legal consultant. We're going to be a facilitator, and we're going to focus on the early stages of the project. And then finally, we're going to develop some relevant templates for industry that can be used. We're going to use those templates, develop them and use them in this process. And then with a view to potentially running more of these, using those templates moving forward. There are some wonderful templates and pieces of work done by City of Melbourne, City of Yarra, and other organisations that have led these processes. We're going to synthesise something for this particular process that's going to help organisations. So you might be a professional services firm, perhaps schools, aged care, retail. Really, this is going to be open to virtually any organisation type, and also groups of organisations, so associations. Okay, so just on to the next slide. So really, what's the opportunity? So really, it's all about managing that long-term energy cost risk. So locking in for a longer period of time to an electricity price, and reducing that exposure to that wholesale retail electricity price, wholesale electricity price out there in the market. So you'll all have experienced some pain, no doubt. And so a PPA allows you to lock in for significantly longer. Obviously, a really important draw card for a lot of organisations looking at PPAs in general, but also group PPAs, is reducing your emissions and your associated carbon liabilities. So you might have set or be looking to set some corporate net zero emissions targets or decarbonisation targets, and are looking to understand what is your best option for meeting that from an electricity emissions perspective. Yeah, so participating organisations as leaders, sorry, there's a little typo in there with the word bank, and obviously strengthening your corporate brand. So strengthening your corporate brand as a sustainability focused organisation, perhaps a leader in your sector or a leader in your geographical region is a wonderful opportunity when you're participating in these sorts of group procurement deals. And then, of course, organisations who are looking at supporting new investment in renewables, so which we call additionality, and also supporting the local community. So collaborating means that you've got a greater load that you go to market with that can bring some of these benefits or potentially all of these benefits as part of that deal than you would have otherwise achieved. So I'm just going to hand over to John Prendergast, who's going to give you, I guess, a little bit of an example or a snapshot of how this would work. Thanks, JP.
Thanks so much, Jackie. It's very exciting to be having our first public webinar on this buyers group, and for BRC-A to be funded to perform this group formation role. I see questions coming in the Q&A. I think we can do those at the end if you agree, Jackie. But onto this slide. Yeah, cheers. But onto this slide, why do a buyers group? It's not just for the sake of it, but it's to tap into the benefits of forming a group. This slide gives an example of the additionality benefits of forming a group. The picture is of Councillor or Mayor Aaron Wood from City of Melbourne celebrating their first buyers group, which led to the finance and construction of the Crowlands wind farm. So in a buyers group, a company that's 2 gigawatt hours may be able to add up with, say, into a group of 5 companies and be large enough to be able to contract with a 5 megawatt solar farm. And that can reduce 10,000 tonnes per annum of emissions and support $10 million investment in new renewables. And that would be an Australian first by way of illustrative example. But if they go it alone, they're probably unlikely to be large enough to contract with directly with a wind or solar or via their retailer and lead to finance in new renewables and to achieve that additionality benefit of helping a renewable energy project be financed and reduce emissions that would not otherwise happen. They still can get additionality through green power in a less direct way. Next slide, Jackie. Yeah, and just to bring forward that point, so what it can also improve or increase the number of options available by forming a group. So typically for a small or a medium energy buyer, they have 4 core options, like switching to a greener retailer and buying green power, or they could buy their LGCs separately from their standard electricity contract or via the same supplier. They could enter into a retail PPA via a retailer with a operating solar and wind farm, or seek more innovative alternatives because they're a small and medium buyer, but very ambitious, which could include, for example, project equity or community solar. So next slide. But as a group, it opens up more options, maybe a retail PPA with a new wind or solar farm to get that additionality, or a sleeve PPA, wholesale PPA, or other model. So just to illustrate, more options can arise by forming a group and having that larger scale. Next slide.
And I guess the benefit there, JP, before we move on, of having more options, obviously more options means ideally better pricing and a greater opportunity for additionality. So, if you're really just limited to one PPA, one purchasing type, obviously there's not a lot you can do if you're going to market at a very specific time to adjust those outcomes. Thanks, JP.
Good point, Jackie. Onto some case studies. So the Australian first was MREP1, Melbourne Renewable Energy Project, led by the City of Melbourne. They formed a group with 14 overall buyers, including councils, universities, cultural organisations and corporates. So quite a large group. They've refined their model since then, but I'll get into that in a moment. So that was 88 gigawatt hours, which is about the equivalent of like a 30 megawatts of wind or 50 megawatts of solar or similar. This resulted in a 10-year contract with Tango Energy, which is part of Pacific Hydro, and a contract with Crowlan's wind farm to see that wind farm be financed. Next one is MREP2, so Melbourne Renewable Energy Project 2, and this was a very well planned and programmed and delivered buyers group, and sort of a market-leading approach that they took, and it went very well. And we'll be absolutely using their resources and learnings in this group formation work that we're doing. So led by City of Melbourne again, resulted in a retail PPA with Tango Energy, 110 gigawatt hours per annum. That included supply from 6 wind farms. It included 6 mid-sized buyers, so they're all around like 10 to 30 gigawatt hours each, so quite even. It included Cbus Property, Citywide, Deakin University, RMIT University, Fulton Hogan, a contractor, ISPT, who own shopping centres and commercial buildings in Mondelez. On to the next slide. Jackie mentioned the line one before. This is a real kind of anchor, large buyer, and they've brought along a lot of smaller buyers with them and led to a 10-year retail PPA with Engie. And we have noted that's the first supply chain PPA in Australia, where they looked at their supply chain and how they can help their supply chain decarbonise as well as themselves. Another one is SS Rock, group of 25 councils in New South Wales, 214 gigawatt hours per annum. That resulted in a 4.5-year retail PPA with Zen Energy. They have contracts with Moree, Nevertai and Hillston solar farms in New South Wales. And that was driven for both sustainability and financial drivers, which we find to be quite common in corporate PPAs.
And SS Rock, just for those of you who are interested, is a Southern Sydney regional organisation of councils, and we've got around, with regards to councils, I think it's like 97% of councils have now executed PPA in Victoria, and around about 70% in New South Wales. And a good number in Western Australia as well, with the other states trailing behind those. But these deals can include, as seen by the MREP deal, some councils together with the private sector. They may be a bit more challenging when that's the case, obviously slightly different business models, but it's certainly possible.
So the benefits and challenges of group buying for renewables. So group buying can see aggregation to achieve greater scale and achieve greater impact. It does see more collective decision making and cooperation and coordination and shared effort and costs. And finally, you can get sharper pricing or lower transaction costs, reduce risk and negotiate better terms, attract more offers, so more choice, like we discussed earlier, and share the workload and expertise. So we find it's often one or two of these benefits that entices a buyer to join a group rather than go alone. That shared workload or sharing consulting and legal costs up front can be beneficial. Power in numbers and getting more scale and more impact can be benefits as well that they tap into. There are some challenges. So agreeing the common objectives, making sure that everyone is aligned by what they're trying to achieve in the group, establishing the governance structures and decision making, facilitating communications and internal stakeholder management, and certainty of success. So this really speaks to why City of Sydney and that BRC-A are working on this early phase of group buy to support the buyers group with these challenges.
That's great. Thanks, JP. Yeah, so as Jonathan mentions there, really the role of the facilitator and the role that we would be playing, very well articulated by Liam Henderson, who led the City of Melbourne MREP 2 deal there, really to coordinate and streamline the process. So in the early stages, it's very much about bringing the buyers together to form a group and to build that knowledge and capacity, capability in the group. And also really assisting with the alignment. So making sure that the group is aligned with the sorts of, outcomes that they're looking for in that process, and confirming the commitment of the group. So obviously at the very start, as you are now, really just a bit of an information gathering sort of stage, and later down the line, obviously there needs to be some form of commitment made to that group. The facilitator can help establish that governance framework. We'll come to that in a moment, and the structures, so that you can have a basis for decision making when obviously you've been to market and the offers have come in and you want to make a decision as a group. Also to coordinate the buyers and the advisors, proponents, help with the sort of the management of the project and the process and keep things moving along. And also chairing some of those meetings so that, there's an independent organisation there to provide that service, so that it's not particularly led necessarily by one participant or another. The rest of them essentially facilitating the workshops, which we'll be doing, discussion, decision-making, liaising, not so much liaising with advisors in these early stages. It's more of a down the pathway sort of part of the project, which we'll get to in a minute. And then supporting with that documentation, engagement, communications, etc. So that's really the sort of work that we'll be doing as part of this process. So as I mentioned earlier, we won't be delivering the entire project. We're going to be leaving that up to the market to do. But we are here really in this early stage to get things moving. So that's going to be, you mentioned, supporting the development and bringing groups in, and developing that terms of reference document that the group will rely on for the decision making later in the process. Providing education and support for internal, in building internal support. I've seen a couple of questions already that have come through with regards to the business case, so I'm back to that. And obviously developing and finalising what's called a memorandum of understanding, which many of you will be familiar with. But basically, again, it's really to secure that commitment between the parties participating in the group. So that's all of stage one. And then we'll get the group going on stage 2 in the appointment of the energy and the legal consultants. So we will help develop the scope and the RFQ documentation for the group in order for you to go out, issue that RFQ and manage that process in order to select your advisors in stage 2. Obviously, following that, it's developing your, developing your go-to-market strategy. So how are you going to approach the market and when? And then developing that tender documentation, putting it out to market for the energy supply, and then obviously the final project close activities, supporting the contract execution piece, so undertaking that due diligence, and also looking at marketing and promotion, how you can get the most out of this from a reputational perspective. The BRC-A, whilst we wouldn't be involved in those subsequent stages, is obviously always here to provide PPA support and understanding and capacity building support. So whilst we may not be directly involved in that project further down the line, we're certainly here and available to talk to. So a lot of that work would be supported, obviously, by the energy and legal consultants, letting them do what they do best. So basically getting started, you know, that sort of first step from a participant's perspective is really about understanding the basics about electricity and PPAs, and understanding how relevant that is to your organisation and what the opportunities for you as an individual company. Understanding how you currently procure your electricity, so that's really important, and understanding how much you purchase. So what is your annual load size? Do you already purchase green power? What's it costing you? You know, are you with multiple retailers in different states? So really getting that sort of snapshot together, and we can give you, we'll give potential participants who are interested and who express their interest a list of some of those factors that we've touched on there to go away and have a little look at in order to support that participation. So seeking interest from potential like-minded participants, so really the bit that we're helping you with here, we will go away and look at the loads collectively in a pooled environment and look at the types of organisations that are interested in participating and your broad alignment. Obviously, then we'd help you with establishing the governance structures, helping you to agree on those common objectives, as we said, quite important, and then working through that sort of facilitation education process. So in the last couple of slides now, really, and we will have plenty of time for questions. So with this initial group that we're really looking at that sort of small to medium-sized energy user organisations to support that. So a lot of the examples to date have been larger organisations, but it's often the smaller organisations that have, I guess, less time and ability to be able to focus on a PPA purchasing process. So this is really the group that we're wanting to help. If you do have large load, though, please get in touch with us because we might have a group of organisations with larger load who we can put you in touch with, and we might be able to support you anyway. Organisations, so really sort of ideally 5 to 25 gigawatt hours per annum, but potentially as low or just under that 1 gigawatt hour per annum grouping is that group that we're looking at here. But as I said, if you're interested, just get in touch with us and we can have a talk to you about how suitable it would be for you with your load. Public or private, as we mentioned before, organisations can apply. And ideally, you have set or are planning to set a sustainability target or goal. And this is for the purposes of goal alignment. So obviously, better pricing is an important goal for everybody. But here, I guess we're looking particularly for organisations who are looking at that sustainability goal. And so that could be as simple as we want to buy renewable energy to to reduce our emissions. It doesn't have to be a target that has a specific metric around it, or it can be. You might be looking at, being 100%, net zero by 2030, or 100% renewable by 2030, or 2026, or something like that. So obviously, so we're not going to be looking at organisations that have the same date or target. It's really just about having a goal in that space. Ideally, your operations, one or more of your operations may be located within the city of Sydney, but obviously we're also happy to talk to anyone who is whose operations are based in Greater New South Wales, so the whole state. Also, if you do have operations in New South Wales and in other states, so you're nationally based or you're in a few states, that is also fine. Most of the retailers that we will be talking to service most of the states in the national electricity market, which is all the eastern seaboard states and South Australia. So just let us know if that's of interest, or if that's the situation that your organisation is in. Look, we are aiming at a minimum sort of size of around 20 gigawatt hours per annum. We don't have a maximum. We are happy to go as big as possible. We probably aren't looking to run this first one for a very large number of organisations. So, we're not sort of aiming at, sort of the 20 to 40 organisations. It's really going to be below that, just for practicality reasons. But let us worry about that, and let us know if you're interested. If we end up with, another group of buyers who are interested in participating, we can certainly talk to you about your options. So a little bit of a timeline here. And so what we're looking at, and it is obviously subject to the group itself, but we're looking at now obviously kicking off in April, where you can express your interest and ask us questions about the process that we're going to be running. We're going to be doing a little bit of initial load modelling depending on who expresses their interest, just to understand what the group might look like. We're also going to be doing a little bit of market sounding with retailers in particular, to understand what's out there, to address any supply issues early, and to understand what's in the pipeline, and which, obviously we want as many retailers participating ultimately in that go-to-market process, further down the line, the procurement process. So we obviously want to make sure that that group can be serviced by the market. In May, then, we're going to be doing a bit more detailed group analysis. So once those interested parties have gone back and sought some information around how they currently buy electricity and what they buy and from whom, we'll be able to do a little bit more analysis to form that group up. We're also going to be running our PPA education workshops during that month. So that will allow you to, if your organisation is interested, to bring along those important people from your organisation that either are key decision makers or are the sustainability, procurement, finance role leaders in your organisation, to learn a bit more about how group purchase works with a PPA. In May, June, we're going to be developing the terms of reference we mentioned before and the MOU draft. We're going to be workshopping those with the group, and obviously helping to provide that support for internal education and approvals. And then ideally by the end of the month, we're going to be looking at signing that MOU, all leading into July, and July then would be the month where we'd be helping to support the group to develop the scope and the RFQ documents for the engagement of these specialists, who will then be leading you through the procurement process for the rest to execution. So that's basically it in terms of our timeline. So we'll come back to questions in a couple of minutes, but essentially the next steps then, if you are interested, would be to contact us to learn more. And we'll provide you with some, I guess, a bit of an information sheet that will require you to go away and do a little bit of homework. Otherwise, if you already know the answers, that'll be fabulous, and that'll be a very quick process for you. But also to ask questions and express your initial interest. So that's our info@businessrenewables.org.au mailbox, and we'll be monitoring that. Ideally, we would like people to come back to us on this before the end of April. And obviously we do have a limit on the number of organisations that we'll be including. So if you are interested, please do get in touch with us ASAP. So we'll come back to you then seeking that high-level information about your load and your operations. Obviously nothing particularly confidential. We obviously won't be sharing that information with anyone else at that point, just looking at that high-level bit of modelling. And then we will pull the model loads and look at that potential group formation. Then we'll get back in touch with you about participating in the group. So that's basically it. I'm sure there are lots of questions.
Lots of questions. Yeah, 12 questions. It's been really good. Should we get into them? I've got a few that are sort of relevant to the slides that we've just presented and might be best to answer first.
Lovely. Lovely. Please do, JP. Let's get on with it.
Patricia Peach asks, once you have facilitated a group of buyers, will you be going to market to find either a consultant or go direct to the retailers or wholesalers? So definitely hiring a consultant. Jackie's taking to the slide, and this slide might have popped up after you asked that question, Patricia. But that is in stage 2, which is to issue an RFQ to appoint energy and legal consultants. We have an anonymous question. Business case was missed out of this slide, Jackie, so it's a relevant one. Is a business case or more detailed analysis generally recommended? And if so, where in the procurement process does this occur? So the answer to the first question is yes, it's definitely important and necessary. And that's to be done with the consultant. Is that right, Jackie, in stage 3?
That's right. So we'll be working with you on the basics of the business case. As part of the educational piece, we'll be working with you on part of that business case. And then obviously, when you move further into the process and you're working with the energy and legal consultants, then you'll be forming that business case up much more, I guess, in a lot more detail on the basis of what the energy and legal consultants will be advising you. So a little bit of it will be done in our process, and then the main piece, obviously, there'll be a business, you may have a business case that you may need to sign in order to sign your MOU, sign that MOU that we developed with you. And then obviously you might look at it again. You might require another internal approval before going to market for the energy and legal consultant. So that's when that will happen. And then obviously, again, once you go to market as a group.
Fantastic. An anonymous question. Can you confirm the minimum annual energy consumption required to join the group? And does this consumption need to be from the NEM only, i.e. energy consumed from the Swiss and overseas is not relevant for this opportunity? Also, a separate question on the same topic was Alicia Lloyd asking if a business site is less than a gigawatt hour but has multiple sites taken into a greater than a gigawatt hour, are they able to participate? I'd firstly say need a site over a gigawatt hour in New South Wales to be able to participate, to be definitely able to participate. If it's multiple sites that add up to a gigawatt hour, it's a maybe. So send an email through and we'll have a look at it. But if you're over a gigawatt hour in New South Wales, you definitely can join. These other ones, just email us and we'll get back to you about whether you can join or not.
And as for including the any sites in the Swiss, it'll really depend on the makeup of the group. There are a few limited retailers that do service the Swiss as well as the NEM states, but it will that would probably, you'd really probably need to be much more focused on the NEM in terms of your concentration of load, and it would be when you go to market, the energy consultant might advise you to seek a price, including those Western Australian sites or excluding them potentially, just to understand what that would be. So let us know, I guess, if you've got anything more specific around that you want to ask us, just get in touch, and we can talk more specifics with you depending on that composition of your load.
Susan Kitchener points out there might be a typo in our email on that last slide, Jackie.
Okay, yes, right.
Right, I'm sure.
I'm quite good at typos, and let me just, I'm assuming this is a typo. But oh, yes, there is indeed. My
I'm busy.
apologies. So I'm going to pop into the chat. You should be able to see the chat. I apologize. Businesses
we'll put it in the chat.
typed a little bit too quickly.
That's okay.
Yeah.
She also asks, do we have a likely timing for this? I think you might have asked that before that slide, which shows over the next few months the plan. She also asks, does ACT count as New South Wales for this purpose? Yes, it does. It's the same region in the national electricity market, and therefore same wholesale price market risk. So yes, it does.
However, I guess there's probably, you may not want to include those sites because that state is 100%, sorry, that territory is 100% renewable already. A lot of organisations don't include their ACT sites.
Yeah, they may just wish to if they normally tender those together, New South Wales and ACT. And secondly, if they want to fix their pricing for a longer term, 5 to 10 years, for example. Anthony Carroll asks, are we looking at wholesale or retail? This definitely depends on the group decision, but is highly likely to be a retail PPA for a few reasons. It's more familiar for these sorts of energy buyers, that sort of peak or off-peak retail contract rather than a more complex derivative style contract. And secondly, with baseload futures and general forecasts down at the moment, retail PPAs are back looking more attractive than say 1 or 2 years ago, so it's likely to be the more viable option.
Yeah, that's right. And it may also be, given the number of participants and the smaller nature of those loads for individual sites, often tends to lend itself more to a retailer situation.
So Alison asks, when would supply begin? Obviously, we don't know that yet. The group is yet to be formed to decide their terms of reference and MOU, appoint consultants and so on. But I guess more the question is, what do you do if you have some members of the group contracted to certain points and others to later or earlier dates? And that can be managed by the retail PPA. They can provide bridging retail contracts for that first 6 or 12 months for those that finish a bit earlier than others. So it's all quite manageable to have a group with different start times, or some of the ones running out sooner can just extend or retender for the interim 6, 12, 18 months or whatever it may be.
But certainly, and I'd add to that, I guess, that certainly by going to market to a point, or by appointing your energy and legal consultants in July this year, it still gives you sort of those 11 months to secure a contract for renewable energy. So you would expect to be able to commence that supply by mid 2025, yes. Obviously, there is, it does depend a little bit on the group and the timing of the group. So you might want to pursue and have a couple of parallel processes going on to compare in that case if you are committed to 2025. But it's certainly doable in that time frame. Next
All
question.
right. For the case studies, do we know how long the process took from end to end, from concept to execution, please?
Yes, so sorry, I've just missed that question.
For those case studies like MREP 1 and 2,
Oh, yes.
line and so on, do we know how long the time frame
Okay.
from concept to execution? Would you like to speak to that one, Jackie?
Yeah, so the MREP one took, it was the very first one done, so you can imagine it took extra time, and they also had quite a lot of companies involved there, 14 companies, and very diverse. Took them 3 years for that first one, but it really was groundbreaking. MREP 2 took half that time, which indicates a nice start of a new trend there. So about 18 months. And then, I'm sorry, I think I've gone a bit too far. The Lime Brewery's process, I don't think was anything like as long. It was very much facilitated by Lion, moving things along quite quickly. But I can't give you an exact time frame for that one or the SS Rock one. But if you are curious about a few more of them, let me know and I'll see if we can get some time frames. But certainly, in 18, 12 months, really, we'd expect this process to be somewhere between 12 to 18 months.
Another anonymous
Which,
question.
if you're looking at a longer term contract, is not terribly bad. If you're looking at sort of, 5, 7, 10-year contract in text. Sorry, JP.
No problem. Another anonymous question. Do you have any case studies from the past buyers groups where reduction in costs were achieved due to the ability to lock in prices and manage energy cost risk? This would help to build the business case, in particular, the sell to our CFO. So we don't have that. So I guess the discussion is, why don't we? We know that many who have entered into wholesale PPAs, retail PPAs, and group deals have really protected themselves from recent market volatility. They've locked in more stable, longer term energy prices. And we all know, well, most of us know how energy prices went very high 2 years ago and have just generally had volatility. It really isn't an exact science, though, because firstly, your price will depend on your scale, what you're asking for, but also the timing. So where is the market at and the forecast at when you buy your electricity? So it really depends on that factor to a large extent. And then beyond that, what are you comparing it to? You're comparing to, well, here's our group deal that we signed for 7 years, retail PPA. Should we compare it to buying all of that energy 1 or 2 years later when prices were crazy, or incrementally 1 year at a time over the? So it's hard to really lock down what to compare to. So generally, it's not an exact science to evaluate the savings. What we advise generally is, when dealing with a CFO, CEO, is to talk more about risk management. So what are the benefits of locking in a longer term price versus potential additional costs or lower costs? And where could that land? Trying to compare costs of what you can lock in now for pricing up to 2032, for example. You can't hand on heart say what the alternate pricing may be in 2032. So you can't say how much cost saving you'll be. So it's about evaluating that risk management. Anything to add to that, Jackie?
I guess I'd add to that. Yeah, exactly right. I'd add to that, though, we do have a lot of organisations that have executed PPAs and have told us that they've saved significant costs on by executing those PPAs. As JP mentioned, it does depend on a lot of factors, time to market, and obviously your particular load. One way this is often handled is by going to market and asking for comparable price with standard electricity. Sometimes organisations will do that. But you also want to factor into your business case the cost of carbon liabilities. So if you are buying renewable electricity, then and you're having to buy maybe offsets or whatever you're trying in order to meet your sustainability targets, make sure you include those costs on top of the standard electricity costs. There's a question here also on how do you verify or provide authentication of renewable energy, and really that's done by the LGCs, which can be retired in order to claim renewable energy purchasing and various other net zero types of claims. We are just about to release a meeting or sustainability commitments guide, which identifies what's required in terms of 5 different initiatives in regards to verifying renewable energy procurement. But it's those large scale generation certificates that really give you that. In a lot of cases, those come through from the retailer, and they will do that for you. And so that's probably it on that question. Anything else you'd like to add there, JP?
Yeah, and David Elliott has asked a similar question, or a related question. With the PPA examples, it isn't 5-minute interval renewables. How do companies make a renewable claim when it is just solar, that this doesn't cover nighttime use? So the way corporate PPAs and renewable energy claims are generally done is around on an annual basis. Are you investing in owning or contracting renewables at the equivalent over a year? It's best to remember these corporates have their core business to run, so need a kind of simple methodology to be able to achieve this. And we can see corporate PPAs have been a key factor in, 30–50% of renewables financed in Australia in recent years. And with BHP contracting wind and solar in Queensland that will meet 10% of Queensland load, this is very meaningful and impactful work, these corporates signing these PPAs. It's currently done over a year, which is realistic because energy is not their core business. They have to run their core business at the same time.
Most organisations we talk to don't have a specialist who is able to manage that sort of 5-minute interval situation. They're really, really very much the larger organisations with that capability in-house or even externally.
Sonia asks, what would you expect the legal and energy consultant costs to be? Will it vary due to customer complexity? It certainly does depend on how you contract those services and what they're used for. So legal costs can range from $20,000 to $100,000, generally speaking. And energy consulting costs can depend on whether you're just using them for analysis or more that project management and other work, or somewhere in between. But that can range from, say, $50,000 to $100,000 itself. And that can be, even though a lot of these contracts are worth $10–50 million, so these transaction costs can be a very low percentage of those. It can be a barrier to corporations doing these longer-term retail PPAs, and that's the benefit. One of the benefits of a group is sharing those costs, those upfront transaction costs, to alleviate that risk a bit.
That's right. So if you have an energy consultant that might be charging you $60,000 and a legal consultant charging you, 20 or 40,000, say 40,000, and then you're at 100,000, then you might divide that by 8 or 10 organisations, and that ends up being just 12 grand per organisation. So that's a pretty good, I guess, element of the business case for organisations to say, well, we spent this amount. It's not as much as we would have spent if we'd gone alone and sought those consultancy services. And we've got this great outcome of a contract for the next 5 to 10 years.
Sticking on the ones more relevant to the slides today. Oh, we're running out of time a bit. When determining energy load, can both tenancy and base building energy be counted? Can entering the group PPA cater for both? So generally, if you're a tenant, you get charged your electricity via your lease, but you're not paying the bill, so you can't put that into the group PPA, just your tenancy, the bill that you're paying. So what you could do for your base building, if you're not paying that bill, but you want to be 100% renewables, is you could try and influence your building owner to switch to renewables, or you could buy LGC separately on that account, or you could invite them to join this group as well. So there's other options, and they could be discussed if you join the group. But generally speaking, it's just for the bills that you pay, so your tenancy bill. Will the slides be circulated? We're recording this, so we'll share the recording, won't we, Jackie?
See better. That's
The
right. Just
slide as well?
amended the email address there on the screen as well.
Right.
Apologies for the typo. So everybody has that. If we've just got 3 minutes left. Any further questions?
Yeah, Peter asked our business model, like for the Business Renewable Centre. So we're funded by City of Sydney to do this upfront work and help support a group. Generally, for Business Renewable Centre, we are funded by members, which includes renewable energy developers and investors and professional services providers and buyers as well. And we also receive government support from time to time for different things. Our seed funding was from ARENA, New South Wales Victorian Government. I think we do have an eye on the future with this opportunity, where we want to prove demand by mid-scale buyers that don't normally enter into retail PPAs of a recurring annual service where BRC-A can facilitate groups annually in the different states to have this more regularly. In that case, how does BRC...
And just to add to that, I guess.
Yep.
Sorry, Jonathan, you go.
Yeah, in that case, BRC-A could be paid up front by those group members, or maybe on a success fee basis, and also seek grants to help those projects in the future as well. So multiple funding sources for that.
Thanks, JP. Just to add to that, there is a question there whether or not we would consider helping form a similar group in Queensland. Yes, absolutely. Get in touch with us and let us know what you're thinking of there. We did run some preliminary education sessions, PPA education sessions in Queensland last year for the state government in the renewable energy zones. And we are also currently delivering renewable energy PPA education in the New South Wales renewable energy zones of Central West Arana, Hunter and New England. So we are doing those pieces of work at the moment. So becoming more and more familiar with the groups operating in those regions.
There's a question on how this is a first. I think I might be referring to that slide where we showed going it alone versus going it in the group. And if 5 buyers came together, they're only 2 gigawatt hours each, and they were able to finance with their PPA a new 5 megawatt solar farm. I think we had a dot point Australian first. I think that could be argued to be an Australian first. I'm not sure that's ever been done before. We certainly don't think what we're doing at this stage is an Australian first, but it may become one. But obviously, by showing all those case studies, we're showing that we're trying to leverage other group buyers that have been done before, leverage their learnings and experiences, and replicate that on this project.
I suppose also we could add that really doing this with the City of Sydney in this way, an NGO partnering with the City of Sydney with a council is an Australian first to run a program which will ideally repeat annually. So that would be a first, and that's certainly what we would like to be doing.
Jose, question was whether we have the PPA price data of all the PPAs done. We do not. They generally, both the seller and buyer hold these numbers closely for fear of public retribution in the future or other commercial in confidence reasons.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. We're a little over time. Thank you all so much for your questions. It's been wonderful to be able to present to you today. We hope to see you dropping us an email, even to get a little bit more information about what we're doing and the types of options we might be looking at. So just please do get in touch with us at that info@ email address now amended, or you are very welcome to email me or Jonathan directly, or give us a phone call, and we will come back to you. Thanks very much, everybody. Thanks very much, Jonathan. Great.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.